Hello, it's good to see you again.
Now that we've learned how to act as our characters, let's learn how everything around us would change if furries inhabited the world.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Furganomics 101 panel. I'm sure some of you have heard the term before, but I'm sure some of you haven't. And, hopefully by the end of this, everybody will have a good grasp on what it means. Furganomics as a idea is the thought of the world adapting to the people that are in it. We all have unique features about us. We're all furries. We have ears, we have horns, we have wings. Most importantly, we have tails. And the world will adapt to us as we see fit. We see a lot of different things in what we do. Ergonomics in clothes, for example. I don't have anything done now. I was a little rushed to get this model done. It looks fantastic and I'm super satisfied. But one thing that we have to think about is how clothes work on models. I have a very large tail. You can't really see it, but would a regular t-shirt just droop through and clip through my tail? I don't think so. When we think about these things, it's how it would adapt. So when you're wearing a big coat with a big tail, wouldn't you think that it would be a good idea to create a slit down the back so it droops down the side? Or simply designing a hole in the jacket so that it fits? This is one of the things that we talk about. You can see up in the back panel and where the drawings that I made are, you can see there's some with wings. If I can come back here, you can see that there are some with wings, there are some with tail spines, there are shoes. I'm covering the head section, but there's antlers, there's horns, there's antenna that we have to think about. And there's a lot of things that we can do to show these off. Clothes, piercings, some of the things that you wouldn't think about. If I have very nice horns, I might want to show them. Have you ever thought about horn accessories or a chain? I have 4 ears. One of the things that I could do to show that off would be to have a piercing in the top ear, a chain, and a piercing in the bottom ear. And that's accentuating one of the unique features about me. Now, before we go any further, I must profess my love, my undying affection for tail bags. We don't see them very often. It's an untapped market. It's an undisputed thing. Nobody makes them, and I don't understand why. When we're wearing backpacks or some other form of bag, we have all of the weight on our shoulders and on our spine, but there's an easier way to do it. Instead of compressing our back, we could have a big bag on our tail with some sort of harness, or sometimes not even a harness. But think about it. All of the weight would be off of your back. No more pain when you're carrying things. Instead, it's all carried where your tail is in the back. It's easy access at the base of the tail, and it compresses none of the spine, so none of the pain. It's these little things, these little extra additions of thought that make a great character, that make it seems so much more fleshed out. In the world, we see a lot of different things. We see these in, and I know it's a horrible example, but I'm going to take into account the rich and the poor as euphemisms for wingless people and people with wings. In the regular world that we have, we see these rich people have access by second stories, by roofs, by landing pads. Why? Because they have access to them, because it's easy use for them. If we had a regular society in which, example, 50% of the people have the ability to fly, how do you think the world would change around that? Do you think that we would see more second story openings? Do you think that we would see more roof entrances? It's little intricacies that make it so much more interesting. One of the things that I like to often say is that Zootopia, the movie, the film, does this fantastically. And the entrance to Zootopia scene, you can see a wide variety of every sort of creature. We have giraffes that have an extra chute so that they can get their drink. We have extra seating in train cars so that the moles, the mice, the ferrets, the small creatures, Judy Hopps, the bunny, she has a space where similar sized creatures won't get stepped on. We need to care about our little friends, and as a little friend, I am only, after all, 2'8". We have to be careful where we're walking too. I may enjoy getting stepped on by a giant macro, but it would hurt, you'd think, right? So I would want to be standing in a special place to walk that's not going to shoot me up in the air. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to hurt anyone else. Wouldn't it be awesome if we can see these little micro causeways, these big spaces in the regular worlds that we have? Also standing in the wrong spot. It's a special thing where we have to take care of the world around us and the people around us as well. Think about those around you. The smaller people, some with full body, have the ability to float themselves to be at eye level. Some people who are large have to go down and shrink themselves and stay on their knees. We have these amazing things in VR chat that enable smaller characters like myself called chibi boxes, or at least that's what I've heard them called. My friend Nato, who made this world, can stand up here on this platform easy, no stage, but no box, no nothing, because they're tall enough to do that. But I need this special addition to my little world so that I have the same opportunity as everyone else and the person that made it exactly. One other thing that we can think about is Furganomics in our behaviors. Common courtesy of tails being a prime example. How many times have all of you, I don't know, sat in front of a mirror, hung with your friends, done what you want to do, but then your friend turns to talk to someone else and boom, you're whapped with a tail. That's gotta suck, right? Think about it. What would be the best way to do that? With a large group of people, example, a subway bus. There's a lot of tail. There's a lot of extra body to go around. What common courtesy things would we focus on to keep our personal space, to keep everyone around us happy? I, myself, tend to think that one of the common courtesy things would be if you're sitting on a subway, you don't have your tail splayed out on all the seats. You don't have your tail shooting out right back behind you. In cases of small enclosures, you'd want your tail to just wrap around you and sit on you, taking up as little space as possible. It's common courtesy for the people around us and the thoughts that contribute to them. I say, again here, flight-capable people. How would society, or that part of society, rotate around itself? Would we see new roadways, but instead would they be skyways? Would we see, again, the second-story entrances? Would there be different changes to society to suit the needs of those in? And I can also say, per species mannerisms, this one's a personal one. I think it's kind of fun. I like to say I'm a dragon, so I would say I like to collect things. I think that it's a neat quote-unquote stereotype, which is a bad word for it, but I think it's a neat little thing. These little intricacies, these little details that can tell so much more about a story. If I have a collection of things, being a dragon, would I display them? Would I have that in my regular part of my outfit? I tend to keep little glass containers just because I think that they're fun, and you never know when you'll need one. I like that. How would I display that? I could have a string of belts. I could have a big tail bag that can hold these. There's so many options, and we are really only limited by our imagination, but it's the thought. The beginning of the thought where we begin to understand that there is more to us than there once was. VR is growing. The furry society is growing. We're going to end up creating a world that we want to be in. And these are things that I think we should think about. Because how cool would it be, right? Thank you for listening to my spiel. I am happy to take a couple questions if anyone wants to.
have a question.
I see Simon with his hand up.
Yes. What about how other species would interact with each other? Or
You're a little quiet. Can you come a little closer?
sorry. How about how would species interact with each other? Like, let's say, how would a cat interact with a bird? Would it be like how humans interact with each other in real life, or would it be something completely different? What do you think?
I think it depends on the scenario. I think it depends on how we want it to be. We already have several pieces of media and scripture that show us different versions of the world and the possibilities. Zootopia is a very positive-esque feeling of the world. On the contrary, Beastars would be the opposite. In one, you see the care and comfort for some, and in the others you see bland distaste and unforgiving world. You see a little bit of contributions to Furganomics from Beastars in the cafeteria scene in one of the first episodes. We see that in the center tree there's actually a stairway that leads up for the smaller animals so they don't get stepped on. It's the world that we want to create. We are the future that we want to be, and it's up to us to make sure that it's the one we want. Any other questions? I'm having a hard time seeing hands. If you have a question, come to the front of the stage panel. Yes, what is your question?
Let's see. The audio is really hard, so I'm trying to. Hold on. There, Flamey got you. Flamey got you.
Wait, who's first?
Red can go first. Red ran up to the front.
Apologies. I lost my train of thought there.
No worries.
How would you feel, or how would you design these seal bags if you had the ability / option to? Because no one has created something like that before, and to my knowledge, no such assets or models exist.
Oh, it's just something that you can sculpt. It's the same thing as adding another feature, adding clothes. It's just rigging it correctly.
I have some questions from the Twitch chat. Okay.
Go ahead. Come on up.
Let's see.
You're gonna have to stand behind the box. Otherwise,
how would something like headphone? Oh, sorry. This is from Twitch user. From here. Okay. How would this is from Happy Smash 27 from Twitch? How would something like headphones work, depending on like the different animals in Sonos?
Well, it depends. I feel like headphones would be much more common than earbuds when we think about this. If I, for example, having 4 ears, wanted to wear earbuds, what am I going to do? Am I going to buy a splitter for my phone so that I can have 2 sets of headphones for double the listening power? Probably not. I'd probably just get a set of headphones. It's one of these per species things that we do, and that I was saying about earlier. Someone who's small, a mouse, would not reasonably be able to use headphones. They'd probably have an earbud that they could use as a speaker. Meanwhile, a large species like a giraffe, they don't have, that would be a long cord. That'd be like a 10-foot cord for your earbud. I feel like, I do definitely feel like headphones would be a lot more commonplace. Cookie, do you have a question?
I do. When we're speaking from a world building perspective, see any although I could understand species coexisting, would you see any sort of segregation? Because, as you said, in Beastars, there is of sort a separation between the herbivores and the carnivores.
Of course.
And
again,
that in Zootopia, you see small versus large animals.
And I like your comparison there. We see both. We see the positive aspect in Zootopia, and we see the negative aspect in Beastars. You see the segregation in Beastars because these larger species tend to think they're better because they're stronger. Same thing with the predators versus the prey. Zootopia being the positive perspective on this, you see nobody's really getting hurt. You do see predatism, as that's what the whole movie was about. But it again, we are the future that we want to create. And if you enjoy a story where that segregation happens and maybe you're overcoming it, then all the more power to you. If you want to side more with the Zootopia side of things, then all the more power to you. We are creators. We are people that have the power to create the media and the world and the universe that we believe in. Furries, we have characters. Most of the rest of the world doesn't have these unique characters that we have. We have these as unique character descriptors. With this character, I see this character as myself. This is as much a representation of me as my real body. And how would I want to be affected in a world that I'm in? How would I want to be affected? Not just the people in it. One of the greatest ways that I read recently to overcome this artist block in creators' world is to think of a time in the world and think of the biggest thing that can cause a ruckus. You have a world that I've created I've called Polara. It's cool. I may post about it later. But I have this world. I have a time that I'm going to put into it. Middle Ages, Lux and the technology, it works. And then I'm going to insert characters. How do I want these characters to interact? Do I want this segregation between my characters? Do I want to create a wall that would separate them? Would I instead want to create something that unifies them and makes it accessible to everyone? Next question. I'm loving this. This is great.
I have another question from Twitch. This is from
Yes.
Epsil Delta. How do you handle visual communication with different species that can see different things? Some might be colorblind, UV, IR, etc.
Well, this is actually a fantastic question because I'm actually colorblind too. I'm red-green colorblind, and if you look at my character, you don't see a lot of those colors on there. It's what we want to be. In the communications with other people, you're still going to talk to them the way you would regularly talk to someone. Don't do the short people thing. I'll break your kneecap. But it's, it's how we talk to each other. I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
Oh, it's about, we're talking about visual communication. So, like, how would stuff like media be delivered to different species if everyone has different? Yeah.
Okay, so media consumption, we could create these different things, channels for smaller creatures that enable them, that empower them, stories for larger creatures that enable, that empower them. I'm all about empowerment. Don't put anyone down. It sucks for everyone. It's what we want, right? I'm short. I'm going to want to see something cool with a short character that uses lots of leaps and bounds to get around. I love the fighting style of Yoda. He's this tiny character that leaps all across the battlefield using his height to his advantage. That's the kind of media that I want to see. If I were someone large, would I want a piece of media accentuating that part about me? Probably. It's, again, what we want to see. This is the biggest thing about it. This is the biggest thing about Furganomics, is that it is what we want to see. We can create this world. We can create these worlds, plural. We have the technology, Drake Streamcam. We have the technology. We have to create it. And not everyone can create it, but we're also furries. We do commissions. I take commissions. Everyone does cool stuff. Even if you don't have the power to create, the community that we have is fantastic enough to enable you to have the media that you want to consume. Of course, you got to pay for it, but what don't you? Any other questions? I don't know how close we are on time. I don't have a timer.
You have about 20 more
30
minutes,
minutes.
actually.
Oh, sweet. I love answering questions. This is going to be great.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said you were into world building. What would be
Mhm.
tips you would give to people who are trying to get into world building?
I'm not necessarily the world creator type. I don't make VR chat worlds. I highly recommend looking at my
like fantasy worlds.
Oh, like in terms of just idealizing.
Writing. Yeah.
Well, example, we'll take my world Falara into account. I have a general idea. It's this world floating in the clouds, and the core of the planet has melted away or braked, and so we have floating islands around the planet, and it's held together by magnetism. What I did there was I created a world that I wanted to see. I love steampunk. I love cool, unique technology that you don't regularly see. So I'm going to insert those parts into what I like, what I want. The most important thing I would say about creating, for world building, for whatever you want to do, is maybe make a list of the traits, the features, the ideas that you like most. Have a base area and figure out a way to insert those things, would be my suggestion.
Where would I be able to find more info about your world?
Well, it's just in my head. I haven't really made anything for it, but I'm working on it.
Okay.
Slowly but surely. Next question. Ara, I see you have a question. And then you can go, Kuthra, don't worry.
So, as someone with a tar character, and actually I'll quickly just... I don't have a tar character, or avatar of my own tar character, but I got this one.
Okay.
What do you think would be like some of the biggest like changes that would have to be done to the world to like accommodate tars with just the bigger everything?
One of the largest things that I see tars needing in terms of accompaniment would be something like chairs. How would chairs in a regular everyday environment have to change to suit what you need? Would you have a little platform that you can kind of just fold your legs on? That might be a thing, but then we'd also have to consider about the amount of space that it's taking. A regular restaurant probably wouldn't be able to, as right now, just bring in a whole bunch of very long chairs to suit tar needs. It's also space consumption when you're thinking about that. You have your straight body, that's a horrible thing to say. You have your regular body, you have your regular body that's just straight, and then you have basically a tail. Basically a tail. You have to figure out how you're going to lay that, how you're going to sit how you need to not A, bother others, preferably, B, still be comfortable how you want, and C, have it be readily available, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, does that answer your question? I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Sweet. Katra, did you have a question?
So, where do you think would be the best place to get my outfits for something as big as a big floofy tail like mine that would fit my like pant, like a tail hole for like a pant. That way I can actually like go through the pants. Where can I?
Well, I mean, I don't really know, unfortunately. You find a content creator that specializes in this. Find someone that makes good clothes, and then say, hey, I want this little adjustment to it to accompany my tail. How can we do that? That's just a conversation between content creator and consumer. Are there any more Twitch questions? Twitch chat? If you have any questions. I'm also going to take a sippy. Give me a second.
Yeah, no, then take that sippy.
Sippy.
Okay, let me see. Let me find one. This is from Riley Riolu. Can a
Okay.
world with anthropomorphic animals work in a time setting that isn't the medieval ages? I was thinking that in a world set in the 1950s or 60s would be interesting. Thought it would be relative.
That is actually a good idea and good thought. Different time periods mean different accommodations. Modern world, we can easily make a chair. We can easily do something very quick. We have the technology. But when you're thinking back in time, there's a lot less technology that was available. So your accommodations are going to need to change accordingly. Victorian times, electricity was just starting to come out. I've been watching a few documentaries. I love the Victorian era. It's super cool. We have all these other things that we have to think about. Just starting electricity. You're not going to be able to use machinery to create stuff. So you're going to need to make something durable that lasts long time, is useful, and is readily available from the materials that you have. So a chair from now featuring a tar would look much different than a chair for a tar back in the Victorian era. It would most likely be more wicker, I would imagine, because it was readily available. Any other questions? I'm talking with my hands a lot. I know.
Ooh. There we go. Am I good?
Zombies, go ahead if you have a question.
Yeah, I was wondering your thoughts on anthro animals owning feral animals, like dogs owning dogs as pets and such.
Oh, it depends on the universe you're in entirely. It's sentience. I think it would be weird for a dog furry to have a pet dog, but it's per universe. If it's normal in your universe, then it's normal in your universe. It's the same as we're going to create this world of talking caricatures. Oh, I have new people I can interact with. They have a dog. Well, I can't interact with them, so I'm going to treat them like a dog.
All right.
If that makes sense. If Twitch chat has any more questions.
Okay, this is from Zelux Arif. How would glasses work for different species, like ones without ears?
Glasses?
Glasses, yes.
Yeah. That is a good one. For me, example, if I were to have 4 ears and I wanted to wear glasses, well, they'd probably have to come up at some point over my head to latch onto the back, or I could have a pair that goes right back to resting over my second ear, or better yet, if you don't have ears, you can have a strap. There's a lot of, I don't wear glasses, unfortunately. They're beautiful. I love glasses. I don't wear them, but I know that you can buy like a strap that if you wear your glasses and you have the strap on, it'll pull it to the back of your head so it stays on. I imagine that it can work in a similar fashion. Red Speed, did you have a question?
Well, more of a statement on the other question. I saw a piece of art on Reddit recently where they had a piercing on the bridge of the nose, at the top of the nose, a piercing, a rod being pierced through, and then the glasses would be asphyxiated on the ends of the rod, so the glasses would literally just float.
Well, see, how cool is that? You're taking an extra additional bar and you're creating utility. If you don't have it, you can make it. We can have piercings. I've seen wonky piercings. I'm not going to say some of them, but I've seen some wonky piercings that are cool. If you were to have a piercing through your nose to hold glasses, you could probably hold some other stuff too. Imagine how well a monocle would stick to your eye if you have a piece of glass to hold it there. Liori, I see you have a question.
So, Fox and I both make assets and avatars. What's a recommendation for how we could create assets that would work for for the largest number of species? Something that the most people would be able to use.
Well, we have the ability to scale things, right? I don't really think there's too much of a change that you would need to make for an asset. If you were to have a general like jacket with a tail hole and you have it scalable, sizes like me would be able to work fine. It would cover my tail just like I wanted to. And then if someone bigger were to use it with a similarly shaped tail, it would just be they'd scale it up to fit themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Back over here.
Okay. I'm back, I know.
Welcome
this
back.
Is from,
I love it when you bring me questions.
Don't thank me, thank Twitch. So
Thank
this
you,
is
Twitch.
from
Love you guys.
Pan DJ Academy.
Okay.
They ask, how would you consider vehicles like cars or motorcycles in a furry world?
Well, the biggest issue with cars and travel in the furry world would be our tails. You would have to, it's just sitting in a car, there'd be some form of tail squishing, or like your tail would jet out onto the other person. So we'd have to design them a little bit differently. One of the main things that we could do, idea off the top of my head, we could like make tail channels where there's a lower part of the car where like you can slide in, stick your tail and in the seat so that it's just going backwards. Smack my wall, come back to the right spot. Ooh. You can stick your tail in a channel where there's extra space. Cars would be a little bit taller, but it would be much more comfortable for everyone. I'm sorry, I'm having way too much fun with this. Thank you all for coming to the panel, by the way.
Okay, this will be, for me personally, this will be the last one I'll ask,
Okay.
and then I had to get ready for the next panel.
Yep.
So the rest will take from the audience. So this is from Explosive Bear. What a wonderful name. How would footwear work out for different species, like being able to have opening claws? Would paw pads be exposed, etc.?
Okay, well, this is something that I think about quite a lot. I can't show my leggies here, unfortunately, but I have the extra digit on the leg like a dog has. And oh, are you showing off my feeties? Look at my fantastic feeties. They're amazing and not done, but they're good. But look, I have these extra digits on my legs that I'm going to need to account for. One of the best things that I could think of would be a sandal that covers the bottom of the shoe so all of my paw pads are good. And then I have straps over the top so that it can easily fit around my extra toe so that it can easily still stick to my foot as I'm lifting it, thinking you can see it. It would still lift my foot and it would do everything that really a shoe does. Meanwhile, if you're someone who has talons like a bird, you could have a little metal tip, I guess. Imagine steel-toed boots, but for claws. Don't do anything crazy. I'm trusting you all. But imagine it. Steel-toed boots for bird furries. They have no more pain on their claws, and then they can have a little bit of a pad that works like a shoe that they can stick their foot in. It just depends on what you want, or what you are, technically. Any other questions? Go ahead.
How do you think helmets would really work, like motorcycle helmets with visors?
This goes back to hats. It depends on the species that you are. It depends on the things that you have. A person with antlers would have a helmet that looks very, very different to someone like me who has 4 ears. There would be a lot more custom things made in a furry world, in a world where all these accommodations need to happen. Everyone is so unique. Everyone is so varied and so incredible and so amazing. All of us, we all are, that we're all unique. We all have individual needs. I would love to have someone that I could go to and be like, hey, I have 4 ears. I have a big tail. Tail part doesn't matter. I have 4 ears. I need a bicycle helmet. What am I going to do? Oh, I'm going to find someone that can create what I want. If I can't find anyone that creates what I want, then honestly, I'll just make it myself. For 4 ears, I'd imagine a biking helmet that that has a little extension for the muzzle, because I have a muzzle and a bike helmet is round. My face is not round. You would have the little out for the muzzle, and then you'd have to have some way to account for the ears. I could have a big hole because air isn't going to go in through my helmet very much at high speeds. I could have an extension of the helmet so that my ears are covered as well. There are a lot of options. It depends on what we want. Anyone else? Come on up. What's your question?
So my question kind of goes along with his, and what that is so with the helmets and such, it's a really neat idea about having the idea of the helmet going around the shape of the muzzle and the shape of the face and whatnot. One thing that I find really interesting in the idea of anthropomorphic fiction is like the ethics behind, sometimes you can't use Furganomics to work your way around something. Say there's like a fighter pilot or something like that who's a dude that got the antlers and stuff like that. The ethics that go into possibly having to do some sort of plastic surgery or some sort of like thing where they got to cut their antlers off every year in order for them to stay active with their stuff. So I really like the idea behind that, because it could bring up a whole new slew of stories.
Exactly. We'd have a lot more specialization in our world as well.
Yeah. Like,
imagine it.
Certain.
Of course. Imagine we have small characters, we have mice. Think about how much more intricately a mouse character could get on a piece of technology, on creating this software, on this hardware. They have small hands, they have small tools. They can get so much more detail. We could have, I feel like in a society where we have the ability to have that level of detail, that mice would probably be, or smaller characters would probably end up taking more of the tech sector. Meanwhile, we have medium-sized animals, regular 5-foot, 6-foot animals, characters doing performances, doing regular things. We could have larger characters use their height. These large characters that have probably more strength than the small characters. Think about how much easier construction in these kinds of worlds would be. It's a fantastic. I love your idea, and it's fantastic. And I mean, it's just the things that we think about. The world will expand ever more when you think about what's in it.
Yep, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Of course. Our perception plays a huge role in the world that we see around us. If I'm actively enjoying and looking for these things, well, I'm probably going to notice someone in the background who has a tail bag. I'm probably going to notice someone in the audience that has a hole. It's because it's what I want to see, so I'm also going to notice it more. When you're thinking about the things that you want to see, you're most likely going to see more of it just because you're paying attention. Any other questions? Go ahead.
What would happen with like living in? Let me think about how to say it. You're going to have different species that have very different living requirements. For example, let's say fish versus a dog. How are these communities going to interact together and coexist? Or are they necessarily segregated?
Well, one of the thoughts, I'm going to draw back on these Zootopia and Beastars again because they're very good analogies. Beastars has this interaction of a small part of the city for the smaller characters that Judy runs through. We have Little Mouse Town, and in Beastars we have at least in the manga, the anime is not there yet, but there's a point where there is interactions with underwater species. There are tiding pools that these species can come up and talk to the animals on the land. They can make deliveries to the people under the water. A big part of it would be creating these spaces that enable us to have these interactions. Does that answer the question?
Alrighty, thank you.
Of course. Do we have any other questions? I see another one.
Question?
Get up here, gamer. What's your question?
How do you think food would work in the furry world? Would we have like feral animals that we can eat, or or alternatives?
This is very per world. The scenario that you create. I personally wouldn't make a world where I'd have feral animals to eat. I'd probably find some sort of way around it. There's plenty of plants that have, protein needs, but I don't like anyone hurting each other, and that's just me. You could have a world where one species is intelligent and others are not, and they could be used for cattle. A lot of the difference there just being one species has intelligence and the other does. Intelligence is a bad word. Sentience. One species has sentience and the other does not. The world would react accordingly. It would enable those that have the sentience, that have the tools, the technology to do what they want, to use what they want and how they would.
Thank you.
Of course. Red, you have another question?
Yeah, this is actually from Twitch chat, if I can pull it up.
Okay.
Let's see. The time traveler asked, "What about spacesuits? And things that needs to be airtight."
Yeah, it would need to be airtight. You could also have a big dome on your head. I would have a big dome on my head. I think it would be fun. I'd have a small dome of glass, and then I'd have the glass blown out for my ears. I think it would be very comedic. Yes. Okay. It's just dependent on what you are. A giraffe spacesuit would probably have a very long neck and almost no space for the tail. Me, being me, would probably have my cool dome helmet, because why not? And I'd have an extra long part of the outfit for my needs, my tail. It's what we need as people. Red, you would have very, very large accompaniments for your head and your ears. Meanwhile, Flamey, with just the small ears and the hair, would probably have a much smaller helmet. And then I've got time for one more question, if anybody wants to. I see Jack. Come on up.
All right, so this is less of a question question about Furganomics and more of a social question in the furry world. What do you think characters that have long tails, social accommodations would be for walking and stuff? Because, like, for me, example, I have a very long tail. What kind of social norms do you think are around that?
I, to be completely honest, I've thought a lot more about stationary things. But if you have a long tail and you're walking, I imagine that you can, I guess, wrap it around yourself if your bones don't bend that way. Your goal would be to have the least amount of space occupied as possible to give everyone else room.
Thank you.
Of course. It looks like that's all the time I have for questions. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming to my Furganomics panel. I hope that one day the idea of Furganomics can become a regular idea that everybody thinks about. It would be awesome if it became common thought. We'd see a lot more of the cool stuff that we thought that we'd see. I hope you guys have a great rest of Furality. Thank you for coming.